Good evening and welcome back to Vegas October 1 Sounds. Tonight I'm going to be continuing up where I left off a couple videos ago with the alignment of videos via synchronization of a visual source. And as you recall, a couple videos ago I said that if we line up videos by observing changes in the scenery on the marquee in front of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, we can establish a timeline, and then from that timeline we can measure difference of arrival for a particular sound. And I spent a whole video on that and came up with a table. And this table measures the time of arrival difference for the first shot of the second burst of volley 9. And we aligned, and I showed you how to align them via the marquee out front, and then how to get all the raw information, and then how to come up with this table. So the question becomes, what can we do with this information in the form that it's currently in without applying a lot of complicated math, and do something that everybody can do. So tonight I'm going to show you in a graphical means how you can take this table and estimate where the shooting location is. And I'll do it very simply, and it'll get us at least a closer approximation to the shooting source, at least for volley 2 shot 1, than simply guessing. So before we get into this, we have to review a little bit about sound. So let's draw some pictures. If we have a sound source somewhere, and let's presume that it's a point source, and I'm going to be talking strictly about muzzle blasts. So remember that muzzle blasts can be modeled for distances that aren't close to it as a point source with spherical propagation. So if a sound is emitted from a muzzle blast is emitted, then it's going to be propagating out at a fairly uniform pace at the speed of sound, fairly uniform distance for every uniform time cycle. So if we have 2 points out here, and let's make this simple, put a point there and a point there, and we draw a line between them. Not quite exact, but close enough, and I'll mark it here so you can see it. And then we go back to drawing our sounds. If that line is essentially parallel to the tangent of the arriving things, then these 2 points are essentially going to receive the sound at the same time. Now I know I'm a little off there, so let's redraw it and make it exact. So if we had 2 points like that at those locations, and it intercepting the wave at exactly the same time, then the time difference of arrival is 0. And so when we bifurcate this line, i.e. if we take the middle point of it and draw a perpendicular, then we will point back to the source. Now unfortunately we can't say much more about which side of the thing it's on, because the time difference is 0. However, if the time difference isn't 0, so let's say that the time difference was favoring this point up here called A, that is the time arrived there first, then we would know that the distance from A to the source is shorter than the distance from here to there. When they're equal, then the time difference is 0. So we'll pick 2 arbitrary points. 2 arbitrary points here, here and there. Alright, and we're going to draw a line between them, and then we're going to make the perpendicular. And let's say that the time, and we're going to take this green thing and we're going to propagate it out till it hits Now that's yeah, that's way off, but anyway, you can see that it's probably going to arrive at the top point first and sometime later arrive at the bottom point. So from that, since it arrived here, we can easily assert then that this point A, we'll call it A, and this one B, is significantly closer to the source than this one. Well, what does that get us? Well, since we've got all this table of time differences, what we can say is, and let's let's work backwards now instead of forwards. What we can say now is that if the sound arrives at A first, then the sound must be in the same half of the graph as point A. And so we can say the source of the sound must be somewhere up in that region. Well, that's a pretty big region, right? But if we have another 2 points, and let's say we have a point here and a point over here, draw a line, but let's make these big so when I draw my line it won't screw up. And okay, draw the line between them and draw the perpendicular that bifurcates the middle of that. And then we record the time of arrival, and it says that it's over here at this point. Let's call this C and this called D. It arrives first at C. Then we can also say that the sound is coming from this side of that bifurcation point. So now we have two different regions, and the source of the sound must fall in the region where they intersect. Namely, for this graph, then the source of the sound will have to fall within this region. And so we could so now we can erase everything where it's not. Okay, and let's see. I'm going to be just left with the points and the region where the source of the sound is. And by repeated application of this pairing of points and narrowing it down, we can get a reasonable approximation to where the sound is coming from without any math whatsoever, except for dividing the line in half. And all we have to do is know the locations on a map of the points, draw a line between them, split it down the middle, and draw the perpendicular, and then go look at our table and say which one came first, and then mark out the region on the same side as the point that received the sound first. So let's go do that and demonstrate how it would work for Vegas. So far, this is just straightforward, simple stuff. So that means that I got to get up a picture of a map of Vegas. So let's do that. All right, here's a map of Vegas. And so if we hop on over to our table over here, we got several things that we can look at. We can pick any of these combinations of this list. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15 combinations. That certainly should give us enough of the points. In fact, I'm sure that we'll stop long before we evaluate all 15 of them. Now, video 7 of our 38 and Ray are pretty close, so we probably don't need to use 738, so that skips one of them, so we can use everything but that one. In other words, if we use 738, it would just be a duplicate of what Raymond Page video does. So let's start with, you could start anywhere really. Let's start with across or oasis. So let's start with oasis. So if we take, and let's take the two furthest away points in fact. Let's go oasis to Excalibur. And in this case, to read this chart, the Excalibur came 0.3 seconds after the sound reached oasis. So let's go back over to our map. And let's go to green. I like green. And so we want to draw one from the Excalibur up here. Now see, in this case we don't have to be very accurate. because this isn't, you know, a real accurate tool. And we draw down to, oh, now I've forgotten where it was precisely on Oasis. So let me go look it up. And for that I used the Las Vegas shooting map. Then we go down to Oasis, and it was on the last building, north end on the west side. Okay. And then for Excalibur, it was past the Blue Man and whatnot. There we go. Oh, almost on a straight line from that pyramid-like building there. Not the Luxor, but I don't know, Blue Man Group or Mind Freak or something. Alright, so now we got a rough idea. There we go, back over to our little map. Choose a drawing tool, green, and we're going to draw some green line between where it was up there, the Excalibur, and that last building down there. Okay. And then remember I said we bifurcate the line. So we got to do approximately the middle. And this is not critical stuff. This is, you know, there we go. And then we draw a perpendicular that way, and we draw a perpendicular this way. Alright, so now which half do we mark? The top half or the bottom half? Well, okay, we go back over to our table. Excuse me, here we go. Our table. And we see that from Oasis to Excalibur, the Excalibur came after that, so in this case it would be the bottom half. So let's just go ahead and mark it, you know, right here. So wherever the source is, it has to be below that bifurcation line, because the sound arrives first at Oasis and then next at the Excalibur. So it's further, the Excalibur is further away than Oasis. Alright, now with that done, then we can pick the next one. Well, let's see. I pick, once again, if we do Oasis and the Hebrew came before Oasis. Okay. So let's go back over to our map, locate the Hebrew one, which this time we'll use yellow. The Hebrew is right here in front of the Luxor. Somewhere right in there. Again, we don't have to be real accurate, and we're going down to the Oasis apartments. So we'll draw a line down there. And then we bifurcate it. That's not exactly bifurcated, but it'll be close enough. Then we hop back over to our table. And since my memory is poor, we were going Hebrew to Oasis to Hebrew, and the Hebrew came first, which is up here at the top. So now we draw yellow lines for everything on that side of it, on the top side by the one that came first, and we only have to go to the point where the Hebrew was. Alright. Then you can extend them out there far enough to make sure you cover everything. Could be on either side. Now, so now we get a region where the two intersect, and let's mark that region. Well, where the two intersect, it has to be where within where the two intersect. So somewhere we're still intersecting there. That still contains intersection. We go up there, over there, and then down this side of the yellow one, and then back across. Alright, so now we can erase everything that's outside of that boundary. And well, we can erase everything but the boundary itself. That way it makes it clean for the next. Because right now we still got a good portion. Oops. I think it's Control Z, isn't it? Hopefully I can get that back. I can't. Well, we'll just redraw it now. So anyway, it was Right like that, down there, and across. Okay, and let's see if I can carefully erase these lines this time. Nope. No. Maybe I'll just, that's not quite right. Well, shoot. Alright, so if we drop back down over to our map, and let me redo the green one, which would have been the blue man up here at Excalibur, just to make sure I haven't screwed things up terribly. Back down there, and we bifurcate it, and it was down below it because that one, so it has to be, yeah, we gotta redraw this. Let's choose blue, so it's going to be more like this, like that. Okay, in the group now we can erase everything but the blue. There we go. Alright, so already we have a fairly good region as to where the shooting source may be, but we don't know which side of the venue it's coming from. So now let's go back over to our table and pick another set. Let's see, let's go across and Hebrew. So across to Hebrew. The Hebrew arrives at 1/10 of a second later. So let's do across to Hebrew. All right. And we'll go back to green. And the across was right here. And the Hebrew again was up here, right in front of the Luxor. And if we bifurcate that line, then it's only going to be where it crosses that region. And I didn't do a very good job on that, did I? No. In this case, it's going to be a little more important, so we better do a better job on it. Okay, so if I bifurcate it, okay, that's still not quite exactly bifurcated, but anyway. So who came first, across or Hebrew? Jumping back to our table, we see that across to Hebrew, the Hebrew came 1/10 of a second later. Okay. Go over to our map. So everything falling below the green line that's also in this region where the blue is going to be a possible location. And so we can just draw it right in there now. And up here, but only over there. Up there, but only over there. So now we've narrowed it down, and once again I'm going to draw a purple or a pink around it so that we can narrow it down a little bit more. And this time I'm trying not to delete it. Okay, erase everything that's not that color. Alright, so now we've located that it's west of the venue. And we could keep applying this with the remaining points until we refine this. Let's see if we can get one more point in here to kind of chop off that. And I know my drawing's poor, but you get the general idea. So let's go, what would be a good one to chop it off? Let's go Raymond Page to Hebrew. Okay, let's do Raymond Page to Hebrew. Back to my green, of course. Raymond Page. Raymond Page was close to up there. Oh, somewhere in there to Hebrew, which is over here. And the bifurcation of that will be up there, which can't be, so we can just worry about this part. Okay, so the Hebrew was closer, so now we can, oops, kind of, and I know these aren't exact here. Okay, so now let's mark the overlap in yellow, and we get and erase everything else. And now we have possible shooter locations. And so you can see that as we keep refining this, we get a much better idea of where it is. Now, since this is strictly a XY thing, you can't determine the elevation of the shooter with this technique. So it's strictly, you know, it could be anywhere in this box at any reasonable elevation. I mean, 1,000 foot in the air isn't going to work. 500 feet in the air may or may not work, but you get the idea. So here, with very simple techniques, no math involved, using only the difference in arrival times of one sound on 5 videos and the combinations of them from that table, we have a generally good idea of where the source of that sound was. Now, you'd have to do that for a number of sounds, or you'd have to apply another stringent technique, which is the alignment, not the alignment method, where you take all the sounds, you measure the muzzle blasts, you'll line up the muzzle blasts, and if they all line up, then you know you have the same source, which is static. So if you take volley 9B, the second burst of volley 9 with the first shot, okay, now that you know where the rough location is, and then you line up all the other videos, even ones outside of the ones we selected here, and the sounds all line up at the same time, roughly speaking. Let me rephrase that. From volley to volley, let's say volley 8, all the volley 8 shots line up from all the videos simply by aligning one shot from video 9. Then what you have is the sound source for those volleys all coming from the same point. And so that's a quick way to eliminate lots and lots of things, and you'll quickly come to the realization that within this box, using this technique, was the source for all the volleys. And you could do the same thing for the single shots, and since this box includes both room 134 and 135 and a couple other things here, you could say that they were all coming from that thing. And similarly, if they had been coming from over here, then this box would move around accordingly. So it's a simple technique, and we get it by aligning videos and then generating that table of time of arrival difference for one sound, and using this technique. All right, and that'll cover it for this evening. We'll grab you in the next one.